everyone. Welcome to the Doing It at Home podcast. Today's episode is just so awesome. We talk with Melissa, and I had been looking forward to talking to Melissa for a very long time. Melissa has had 5 home births. 5 home births. So that's the most home births from anyone that we have spoken with thus far on the show. And they span over the course of 20 years, which is amazing. At the time we speak, her oldest child is 21 and her youngest is 7 months. And she has such vivid details and memories of all of them, and they're all beautifully unique, and it's just so awesome, like I said at the beginning. So I'm going to shut up and just let you listen in on this goodness. Hi, Melissa. Welcome to the Doing It at Home podcast. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, we're awesome.
Yeah, we're doing fantastic. We're enjoying this beautiful day here in Atlanta, and we are super excited to be talking with you, and you're all the way on the other end of the country, which is so much fun.
Yeah.
So, once again, thank you for joining us.
Indeed. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you guys. I love what you're doing. Giving exposure to home birth is amazing. So I'm super stoked to be talking to you today.
Yes, and you have some experience with home birth,
Just
and
a little bit.
We'll be getting into that. But just to share the context of that, why don't you tell us a little bit about your family and who's in it?
So my name is Melissa, and I live here in gorgeous, amazing Ashland, Oregon, with my 5 kids. And so my first 3 babies, I guess they're not babies anymore, but my first 3, I got married to my first husband real young. I was 18, and we then had 3 children together, Josiah, Elijah, and Eliana, and they are now 21, 19, and 17, so they're basically adults. And then when I was 34, I think, I met my second husband, and we have Luna, who is 4, and Kieran, who just turned 10 months yesterday. So, lots of babies over my lifetime.
Lots of babies, and all of them home births, correct?
Exactly. All of them home births. Yeah, starting way back in 1996.
Wow.
So,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So your first home birth baby to now, I mean, there's so much we could get into, which I want to a little bit later, on how home birth as a culture and a concept and an experience has changed over that time. I imagine it has to be insane how different it is.
Yeah.
So could you, I know each birth, we talked a little bit before we hit record, we could do an entire episode on each one.
On each birth, right.
But what are some of the highlights or the big things you got out of each birth?
I actually want to jump in and ask you this question before we get into that, Melissa. When you were 19, I want to understand, like, was home birth always something that you just knew you were going to do? Was it something, like, how did you arrive at home birth for yourself?
Really interesting. So my ex-husband and I, we got married, young, and we had actually planned to wait a few years before we got pregnant. And my mom ended up getting breast cancer diagnosed right after we got married. And I panicked, oh my gosh, what if she doesn't make it? I want her to see one of my babies. So that totally changed kind of our plan. And we, I got off birth control and we got pregnant pretty much 4 months after we were married. My mom's amazing and fine and, like a 22-year survivor now. But I never thought about it. I had never thought about it. I was so young. Who thinks about that?
Yeah.
So it was interesting because it was like I got pregnant and I just knew I didn't want to be in a hospital. I just had this really strong feeling of, I think I want to do this at home, which I had only known one person in our family who had home birthed, and that was my mom's brother. So his wife all of their children were born at home. And I always thought that was kind of cool, but I never really thought, well, I'm going to have mine at home. But when I got pregnant, it just felt like the right thing for me. And thankfully, I've really lucked out in the husband department. Both of my husbands have been amazing and just completely on board with it, which is awesome because that doesn't always happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So my husband then, Judd, he was like, yeah, let's do it at home. Awesome. So so that we found a midwife and went from there, and it just always seemed like the right thing for us.
Now,
after your first, sorry,
go ahead.
I was going to say, and then after your first home birth, it's like no brainer.
Yeah.
When everything goes smoothly, like, oh, okay, we'll just have the second one and then the third one at home.
That's so cool. Wow. So
Yeah.
what was the response from your family like when, at 19, when you said, hey, I'm going to have this baby at home?
So I think if they questioned it, they didn't really say. I know, my parents were always really supportive of it. My grandmother was probably the most vocal. She was the most concerned. But everybody was really pretty supportive. I think my ex-husband's family was a little like, what the heck are you doing? But they never challenged us. They never gave us a hard time. They just kind of accepted that this was our journey and our choice. And we always told them, these are really trained professionals. And if something goes wrong, we will end up at the hospital. That's what hospitals are for. So, and they had met the midwife. My mom was always really involved in our appointments. She would come. And so they were pretty comfortable with it, which was amazing to have that support system. And I think my mother has been at every single birth.
Wow.
Which
so
is
cool.
awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is really cool. Thank you for thinking of that, Matthew. I wanted to jump right into talk about the births, but you're like, wait a second, how did we get there? So thank you for that, that backstory.
So there's two of us.
Are you comfortable now jumping into talking about the births?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm absolutely comfortable. We may proceed.
Talk about the births.
Yes, each of them must be so beautiful and unique, but I'm just curious what strings them all together, what some of and then this happened in this one. So, the floor is yours in whatever fashion or order you want to talk about this. We are open.
Okay. I'll probably, just because it's easier for me, go in chronological order.
Sure. That makes sense.
Perfect.
Otherwise I may get a little confused. So, my first baby was a pretty common, I would say, stereotypical first child labor. I don't remember exactly what time contractions started. It's been 21 years, but I remember contractions starting kind of light, and I called the midwife, and I'd been in labor, and she came over, and I was having prodromal labor, so it wasn't super active. I think I was at about 2 centimeters when she got there, and so we did the usual, let's walk, let's just kind of get things moving, go shopping, just get on with your day. And so we did that for pretty much into the evening. And contractions never really got super close. Like, they always were about 5 to 10 minutes apart, never got super close together. And I dilated to a 6 and then kind of stalled out for I think it was 12 hours or something. And, they're monitoring baby. Baby was fine. And finally they said, I think we're going to need to get something going here. So we chose at that point to have them break my waters. And I had almost like a double balled bag. They said it was just like this super thick bag, and his head, there was so much water in front of his head, he wasn't engaging because the contractions just, nothing was strong enough. So they broke my water, and of course, then his head engaged, and I was in labor.
Oh,
and
wow.
I remember, we went for a walk right after they broke my waters, and coming back up the hill to my house, just crying. I was so young, and I was like, I don't think I'm ready to be a mom.
Oh, gosh.
So sticks out in my head. And my ex-husband said, "You don't have a choice now."
Clear.
And that kind of like snapped me out of it. And I was like, yeah, I guess I don't. This baby's coming out. And from that point, from the point of breaking my waters to him being born was about 4 hours. So I pushed long and hard with him. I think it was about 2.5 hours of pushing. I, had minor tearing. I think I got 3 stitches. And I just remember feeling with that first baby, just feeling at one point, like, I think I'm going to die. I think I might die. It just hurts so bad. And my midwife had told me this because I was like, what is it going to feel like? What is it going to feel like? And I remember she looked at me and she said, there will be a point where you think you're dying, but you're not. And then your baby's going to be born. And it really kind of went like that. I thought, I can't do this. I'm going to die. I can't do it. And then, there he was. And you forget all about it. It's so birth every time that just, it's fascinating to me how you're in so much pain and you think there's no way I'm doing this again, or there's no way I'm getting through this. And then that baby's in your arms and immediately yes, I'll do it again. It's just so amazing. So he was born and he was tired. It was a long labor. And so he didn't really cry when he was born. And I woke up that like a couple hours later, we went to sleep, he sort of nursed a little. He was just tired. And we slept for a couple hours. And then I woke up to this baby crying, after what, it was like 36 hours of, kind of drawn out labor. And I just remember waking up going, oh, what's that noise? Like, oh my God, I had a baby. And he was such an easy baby. I got totally spoiled the first time. Totally spoiled. Just a super kind of chill human being, and sweet, just a sweet human. And he's still sweet at 21. He still is he'll come over sometimes just to say, I love you and give me a hug. And then he takes off and goes back home.
Oh,
he lives here in Ashland with his girlfriend. And so it's awesome that I get to see him often. And then my second son, so they're 2 years apart, the boys are, and we've definitely really planned him. I just had this feeling, I pretty much knew I'm going to have a boy again, and I want them to be best buddies, and I want them to be close together. And so we tried, to get pregnant with Eli, and it happened pretty much the first or second month we tried. And his birth was a little more just unexpected, I guess. After you have your first baby and it's long and it's drawn out, you kind of think labor is that. You don't really, and everybody tells you, well, it gets shorter, it gets easier. But in my head, I just thought that's birth. That's what it's going to be. And so we actually we were in the process of purchasing our first home, and we had moved in with my parents while it closed. And so the plan was we would be moved out and have the baby in our new house. And that didn't work out exactly like that. He decided to come a month early. And it was back then. Now most midwives will not do a home birth under 37 weeks. That was in 1998 or 1998. I'm sorry. And the protocol then was 36 weeks. Okay. So I had just made 36 weeks to the day, and woke up at about 11 o'clock at night. I think it was about 11:30 at night. Woke up having contractions, and I left my husband and my older son in the bed asleep, and I thought, I'm just going to kind of go downstairs and walk around and see if this is real labor before I wake anybody up or call the midwife or anything. And I don't know how long I was down there having contractions and walking, and I always do this. I always wait too long. This is the running theme from this birth on. The running theme is Melissa waits too long. So I thought, well, I'm just gonna, I want to wait until I'm like moaning through contractions or something for it to be real labor. And I went to the bathroom at one point, and I had bloody show, and so then I called my midwife, and she was about an hour from where we lived. And so she had quite a drive to get there. And by the time she got there, I don't know how, I was close. I was probably hitting transition. And I had planned to have a water birth, filled up the tub, got out at one point, and labor happened, and I never got back in the water. And so he was born on dry land, as I like to say. So his birth was fast. It was like 4 hours, start to finish. And his birth was the only birth I can say was not painful. I feel like I just breathed him out. I just was breathing through contractions. I never had that feeling of, oh shit, I didn't have that like horrible, intense, sometimes it just hits you like a freight train. I didn't have that with him. It just was really gentle. The whole birth was really sweet and gentle, and I was determined not to tear. So I specifically breathed his head out and I didn't push. I didn't really bear down until it was time to get his shoulders out. And he just came out. My first baby was 8'6". Josiah was 8 pounds 6 ounces. Eli was a month early, and he was 7'4", which is pretty big for a month early. So he probably would have been a 10-pound baby. But he was definitely premature. He was really lethargic in terms of nursing. I had to like poke his feet and rub his cheeks and try to wake him up. That first month of nursing with him was really, really hard. It was a struggle. But his birth was just incredible. And I actually have somewhere on a VHS tape, I have his birth video.
That's great.
I need to get it transferred to a digital file or something. His birth was just awesome. And so then 2 years later, we actually, at that point, we kind of thought, maybe let's stop. We have these 2 boys, they're beautiful, let's stop having babies. So we made a vasectomy appointment for him. And 2 weeks after we had made the appointment, we found out I was pregnant with my daughter.
Oh, wow.
And I'm so glad she snuck in there. And I got my first girl.
Yeah.
So she's 2 years younger than Eli. So they're all 2 years apart, those first 3. And again, her birth, with hers, I thought, I went early with my last one. So I expected from like 34 weeks on, I was ready. And I thought, this baby's coming. She might come earlier. I might end up at the hospital. Who knows? Because a lot of times that happens. If you have one early, they'll kind of get earlier with each birth. That did not happen. She was 41 weeks when she decided to be born. So that last 5 weeks of my pregnancy, I just, I thought any minute.
Yeah.
You're ready.
And I'd have tons of practice contractions, nothing. And then finally, it was getting close to Christmas. She was born December 15th. And I think the day before, my midwife said, do you want to try some cohosh or some herbs to see if we can get things moving? And so she did give me some herbs, and I think that kind of kicked it in the butt. And her labor was ridiculously precipitous. My husband had just left for work. I had the 2 little kids, and I think I'd had like 2 contractions before he left. And I said, I've been having contractions for a month. This is probably not labor. Back then, really aging myself. We didn't have cell phones. He had a pager. And so I said, I'll page you if it picks up, whatever. Again, thinking I probably have at least 4 hours. And he left. And I think it was like half an hour after he left, labor just hit. And I have the most vivid memory of being on the floor and changing my 2-year-old's diaper while I was just like moaning through contractions.
Oh.
Wow.
And my 4-year-old going, Mommy, what are you doing? I'm having a baby by myself because no one is here. So I called my mom. I paged my husband, and I think my mom got there. It was a blur. Literally, it was just like labor hit, and I was just breathing and moaning and trying not to have the baby before people got there. And so my mom showed up, my husband showed up, and shortly after they showed up, I knew I had to push. And I don't know why I didn't. I think it was just because I was so young. I was 23 at that point, and I didn't push. I was waiting for the midwife to get there. So I was just on hands and knees, breathing and moaning. And my midwife got there, and she checked me. And she literally, like, she had her fingers in checking me. And she pulled her hand out, and she looked at me, and she goes, "Go."
Oh.
And I just, it was 2 pushes, and she shot out, sprayed my midwife with amniotic fluid. I mean, it was just like this rocket ship of a childbirth. And I, again, was planning on birthing in the water. We had the big trough tub in the living room that was about 2 inches filled when she was born. So she didn't get to be born in the water. We did float after, which I have some great photos of us with her, floating. And she was huge. She was 9 pounds, 10 ounces.
Wow.
And I didn't care. And she just, she came fast. And that was Eliana. And she's still kind of that way. She's just, it's interesting. Like, you can look at your birth and your kids' personalities and think, there might be a correlation here.
Yeah, I love that.
My second son is just, chill almost doesn't describe him. He is like the most easygoing human. Just, okay. Everything's like really slow and easy with him. And he's always been the one that takes like a half an hour to put his shoes on. But it's just pain, it's painless with him. I'm like, that was my birth. And
wow.
And Ellie's a little bit more, she's intense. She knows what she wants. She knows how to go get it. She's just a big, she's got this huge, gorgeous personality, and she had a big birth, big fast birth. And it was, and it's interesting because her birth was definitely just as painful, I guess I would describe, that intense sensation as my first son. But because once you've had a baby or two, I never had that moment of, I'm going to die. Right. I never had that moment again in childbirth. From that point on, every birth was just kind of like, oh, here's the part that sucks. Okay. But knowing that joy that comes after, it's almost addicting. It's almost addicting, that feeling of that slippery little newborn. It's just incredible, that moment, which I'm sure you can relate to, that moment when you're just seeing this little person that was in you the whole time. It's phenomenal. And I can't imagine, which is why I love being at home, because I can't imagine, I don't know, I was a doula for a while, so I've been to hospital births, and there's just a lot going on. Oftentimes it's a little bit noisier, it's a little bit brighter, there's more people in and out of the room, and having that moment where it's just so sacred and so quiet and just, it's me and my baby, that sweetness that I think a lot of times you're able to get more at home, especially if there's no complications. And, it seems like midwives are so incredible at giving you that space to just have that first moment that's so precious, and you never get it back. That's it's your first meeting with your child. It's precious. And and I highly recommend, if you can and you're healthy and everything is fine, consider it, because it's just so sweet. And then you get to go to your own bed, which is like nothing else, to be able to climb in your own bed with your baby and have your own food and your, everything
all of that,
everything that's comfort to you in that moment is pretty awesome. I feel really blessed to have had amazing midwives, for one thing. I had the same midwife with my first 3 children, and then she had retired by the time I had my last babies. But I don't know if you want me to segue into my children of my
Yes, so you took a little bit of a
years.
break from the baby making game, but then you got back in there.
I did. So my ex-husband and I, he's an amazing guy. We're great friends, and he's a phenomenal father. But we parted ways when I was in my early 30s, and so yeah, I didn't ever think I was going to have more children. I didn't even know that I was going to get married again. For one thing, I kind of thought maybe I'll just be, single from this point on. And I met Joe in a yoga class, and we kind of met and started this amazing friendship and never looked back. Like, we just hit it off immediately. And so he is 3 years younger than me, and he had led this phenomenal life of travel and fun, and he landed here in Ashland, Oregon a few months before I met him, just kind of randomly. And I snapped him up, and now he's back here with me.
I love it.
But he didn't have any children. And so it was interesting. It was interesting because we met, we fell in love, we knew, we just knew it was like coming home, meeting each other. We just knew we were going to be together for probably the rest of our lives, but definitely a very long time. And so one day, he used to travel a lot for work, and he was, I think, a day or two away from leaving to go to his job. And we looked at each other, and he said, "I really feel like we should have a baby together." And I said, "I really feel like we should too." And we had this conversation before we even discussed marriage. But it was like, yeah, I feel like there's a baby that wants to come through us. And so we tried one time, and she came through. I got pregnant with one try.
Wow.
And I thought, and he always jokes with me because I'm older than him. He's like, you're not getting any younger. You're 35. Or maybe I was, I'm trying to think. Oh, I think I was 34 when I got pregnant with her, and 35 when I had her. Yes, that's correct. So, we kind of both almost thought it might take a while. It might, I may not be as fertile as I was when I was young, and it did not take a while. So, and we actually had, because he'd asked me about my other 3 children and their births, and so we had that conversation a little bit. He knew I had my first 3 at home.
Yeah.
But he said it's interesting because he kind of grew up in cities, and I was always a small town kind of country girl. And he said, in LA, he's like, nobody even mentions home birth. He said, it's just, you go to the hospital and most of the time you have a cesarean. He said, that's just what his concept of birth was you go to the hospital and probably they're going to do surgery and then you have a baby. And so when I got pregnant and I said, we're going to do a home birth, he was like, I'd never thought of that, but okay, let's do it.
Wow, that's cool.
So, and I had a really cool naturopath who was also a midwife, and I had been seeing her just for my women's health. And so, and it was funny because before we had made the decision to get pregnant, I had seen her for my annual exam, and she looked at me and she goes, I feel like I'm going to be seeing you soon because you're going to get pregnant. and I did. And so she was awesome. And we, of course, I planned a water birth again. This time I got it, which is amazing. So yeah, Luna's pregnancy, I kind of went into it thinking, I don't know, it's funny because at 34, 35, that's not old. But because I had my first 3 so young, I kept anticipating maybe something will be wrong. Maybe pregnancy won't be as easy. Maybe this, maybe that. And so we even had looked at like possibly finding a doctor who would be our backup in case. And interestingly enough, here where I live, doctors are not huge fans of backing up midwives. So
Really?
there are some midwives, no, it's crazy. There are some midwives who have good relationships with doctors. So if you happen to get transferred and that doctor happens to be on call, then you're going to have a great, will have a good rapport and all of that. But there is not one doctor in our town or in the town close. There's a town a little bit north of us that's bigger, that has bigger hospitals and a NICU and all of that stuff. And nobody in that town will back a midwife. Nobody in Ashland will back a midwife.
Wow.
Because I think it's a liability thing. I don't know. And so so we literally couldn't find a doctor. If we said we're planning a home birth, but we want to back up, and they were like, if you're planning a home birth, we're not backing you up. So it was just like, okay, but we won't have a doctor that we have a relationship with. We'll just transfer if we need to. But we kind of had that in the back of our heads, like maybe something won't go perfectly this time. And it was totally easy pregnancy, super easy birth. It went perfectly. And she was, so she was born at 2:11 a.m. and labor started for me around, it started maybe kind of slowly around 10, I'd say about 10 o'clock, but I wasn't paying it. It was like, these don't hurt. They're 20 minutes apart. Until they get closer, I'm not calling this labor.
Yeah.
Because I'd had multiple contractions for, weeks leading up. And so I had a few and I thought, whatever, I'll go on with my evening, try to go to sleep. And then when I couldn't really get comfortable, I thought, okay, maybe something's brewing. So we got up and I sat on the yoga ball for a little while, and around midnight, I walked into the kitchen and a contraction came and I had to moan through it. And Joe kept saying, do you want me to call the midwife, Wendy? Do you want me to call Wendy? And I was like, no, it's fine. Let's wait till things really happen. Let's just, and he heard me moan through that and he's like, I'm calling the midwife.
Because Melissa waits too long. We've learned this by now.
Melissa waits too long. And so this is his first baby, and he's like, I am calling the midwife. Thank goodness he did, because by the time she got there, I think it was about 1 or maybe, it was about 1:30 a.m. And so she came in. She said, do you want me to check you? I was like, sure, kind of curious where I am. She checked me. I was 8.5, and she said, let's fill the tub. So,
yes.
So we filled the tub, and Joe was, from the moment we decided to have a home birth, he was like, I am catching that baby.
Oh, that's cool.
So, and by this point, I'm older. I'm a little bit, I didn't catch any of my first 3, but I knew that with this one, I was like, no, I'm catching this baby. You can help, but I'm catching this baby. So we had both told the midwife, hands off unless you need to touch us, but we're going to do this ourselves. And so yeah, we both caught her. I think somewhere that we may have a photo with both of our hands on her as she came out, but it was just, easy birth. There was one moment with her that it's kind of like you always have this one moment that sticks out about each birth. And the one moment with her that stuck out was I was slowly pushing, breathing, trying to ease her head out again, being conscious about not tearing. And I had flipped around in the tub, and so nobody could really see, they couldn't see super well what was going on. And I remember thinking, okay, so I could breathe through the next contraction, or I could just power her head out and be done. And so that was the one moment that I really remember. And I reached down and I just let out this huge animal scream and powered her head out.
Wow.
And my midwife thought, okay, that's crowning. She's like, okay, so the baby's crowning. I think you might want to turn around so Joe can help you catch. And I turn around and the baby's head's out. She's like, oh, the whole head. Okay.
Well, all right.
All right, let's have a baby. And then, we birthed the rest of her, and it was great. It was, he helped catch, and she was what I affectionately refer to as my booby baby. She latched on literally brought her to my chest, and she latched on immediately.
Wow.
That's really
She
great.
came out, just wanting to nurse a lot for 2.5 years, which she did. And that was great. And then it's interesting because, and so, everybody says that a lot of times, your births get faster and faster and faster. But for me, it seems like the last 3 were kind of, well, Ellie's was a little bit more precipitous, but the last ones were all sort of similar in that, the real intense, what you would call the transition part of labor for me, does not last long at all, maybe a half an hour. And then, the leading up to it could be anywhere from 4 hours to an hour. So they've all been pretty quick, which is awesome because I feel like I can do pretty much any amount of pain or intense sensation if it's only going to last a couple hours.
Right.
It's when it's that, like that first baby, when it's just so drawn out that it gets really tiring. Mm-hmm. And so the beauty for me about having multiple kids is that after I had, actually from my second baby on, like right after the birth, I just felt great. Like, I'm not tired. I feel awesome. Not worn out, like no tearing with any of them. So not, just not sore. I've been so blessed with really easy, amazing births. And then, so after Luna, I wasn't sure I wanted to have another baby. There's 12 and a half years between Ellie and Luna. So there's, a huge gap there. And we knew that the older kids were going to be leaving, and she would be left an only child, essentially. Mm-hmm. And so we had a lot of discussions about whether or not we wanted to have another baby. He knew he wanted to have another one. It was more like, I'm actually getting older at this point. Do I want to have another baby?
Yeah.
And we did try when Luna was 2, and I had a feeling it was too soon, and I did get pregnant, and we had a miscarriage, and it was a pretty intense miscarriage. I did that at home also, under the care of a different midwife, because my previous midwife had been opened a birth center, and she was sort of focused on just doing birth center births. Mm. And so I hemorrhaged a lot. Wow. And that took me, I would say, a full year to recover from physically.
Oh, wow.
And we found out that I had a thyroid issue. I was hypothyroid. So I think after I had Luna, somewhere in there, something went a little wonky with my thyroid. And so, after the miscarriage, my midwife ran a whole battery of tests and found out, oh, you're hypothyroid, and that's probably why you had a miscarriage. And so worked with a good endocrinologist and got that under control, which took about another year. So, by the time I got to where I was like, I'm feeling good, my thyroid levels are good, everything's great, at that point I was 39. And let me see, when was he born? I got to think about so 38. I was 38. And I told Joe, I said, okay, I will do this one last time. And if something happens and we have a miscarriage, I'm not doing it again. Mm-hmm. And so we tried, and we got pregnant immediately. And, there was that fear this time. That was different with Kieran, is that there was, because I had never had a miscarriage, I'd never had that fear of that first trimester worrying about losing a baby.
Right.
It just had never crossed my mind. So, with his pregnancy, that the first trimester was rough. Mm-hmm. I kept, every time I'd go to the bathroom, I was like expecting blood. And it never came, thank God, because he is awesome.
He's a cutie.
But, he is a cutie, yeah. And looking back, it's interesting because I had my first 3 2 years apart, and then got pregnant with that baby that we miscarried when Luna was 2. And as hard as that miscarriage was, and as difficult as that experience was, I actually wouldn't change it. I wouldn't take it back. For one thing, it's given me such compassion and understanding that I never had for women who have lost a child.
Yeah.
And, being able to relate to friends and it was interesting. So many women came forward saying, I've lost a baby, who women close to me that I'd never known. My mother-in-law, she's lost 2, just all these women came out of the woodwork who were close to me, who had never shared their stories. So that was, in that sense, that was a blessing. And it also gave me another 2 years with Luna, essentially, for it to just be the 2 of us. And so I got to really experience her in a way that I never got to experience my other 3.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
I had that full 4 years with her of just soaking her up and really thinking, like, this is probably my last child. So that was amazing. And it was so much easier. Oh my gosh, having a newborn and a 4-year-old. So much easier than having a newborn and a 2-year-old. Like night and day.
Oh, man.
Night and day easier.
I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
We're looking at each other because we've talked about that 2-year mark.
I'm like,
Yeah, it's great if you want them to be best friends, which my boys are still best friends. Mm-hmm. But it's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's a hard age gap. Yeah, you got to be ready for it. So I'm glad that I had that time with Luna, and then got pregnant with Kieran, and again, older, 38. I turned 39 when I was pregnant with him. I thought it's going to be harder. I'm really I'm almost 40. This might not be like Luna's. And I think because I was so determined to not have a difficult pregnancy with him, and because I'd had the miscarriage scare, I was so good about self-care during my pregnancy with him. I went to acupuncture almost weekly from the very beginning. I saw my chiropractor every couple weeks, every month, every month at the beginning, every couple weeks at the end. I got massages every month, and then at the last month of my pregnancy, I got one every week. I pampered myself, and it was the easiest. It was the easiest pregnancy I've had. At 38, it was the easiest pregnancy I've had. Wow. The only exception to that was I had morning sickness for the first time. I'd never been sick with any of my others, and I definitely was barfing with him. But which kind of made me feel good during the first trimester. I was like, well, I'm still puking. Must be a healthy.
Yeah, right.
Must be going that normally.
Yeah. And his birth was pretty similar to Luna's, I would say. I had a different midwife this time. So I had a different midwife with Luna's and a different midwife with my miscarriage. And then when I got pregnant with Kieran, it was kind of that same thing with my first baby, where I do birth photography as well. So I had done births with different midwives. And in the time between my miscarriage and getting pregnant with Kieran, I had done a birth with another midwife, Cara, and we just really hit it off. And she's my age exactly. And so it kind of felt like this sisterhood instead of a mentorship, which at that point in my life, I really just wanted kind of like a friend who had enough medical training that she could deal with something that came up. But I wanted to be in charge, basically.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And she really gave me the space to do that, which was amazing. And so, again, Jill and I fought over who's going to catch the baby. And he definitely got his hands on Kieran, I'd say a little more than Luna. He was all about it. He wore a GoPro on his head.
Oh, wow.
And so the video footage that you saw of his birth was from the GoPro on Joe's head.
Cool. Whose idea was that?
It was mine. And I'm kind of bummed because the angle wasn't perfect, and so you couldn't see his hands catching too. You could in the photos, which is great, but you couldn't see his hands catching in the video because he didn't have it angled down enough. But whatever. You still got to see it. And so, Kieran's birth was, I kept telling him, now, I think this might have worked. The entire time I was pregnant, I kept telling him, we're going to wake up in the morning, and then labor's going to start because I don't like being tired. I need my sleep.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And so I kept saying, okay, little baby, we're going to wake up in the morning when it's time, especially those last few weeks. I just kept telling him, you know, I'd have contractions. I would always have my like little chunks of Braxton Hicks towards the end at night. And so I kept telling him, you can have some contractions, but then I'm going to sleep. And if you want to be born, you're going to do it in the morning. And he listened. So I think I woke up at 4 in the morning with some contractions like 20 minutes apart, and I slept through them till probably 8. And then because it was like, I mean, they may have even been a half hour apart, and they weren't painful. It was just the sensation of maybe something starting. And then we woke up and they stayed 20 minutes apart until about 10 in the morning when the midwife, I think they started, about 10 in the morning, they started to be maybe 10 minutes apart, maybe 9:30 in the morning, they started to be about 10 minutes apart. So I called the midwife and said, I've been having contractions. You might want to think about maybe coming over. And because she kept telling me, I want you to call me if anything happens because you wait too long.
Yes.
I have time to set up my stuff. And so I called her early, and she came about, I think she ended up getting here about 10. And, you know, it was like, it didn't even feel like labor. I was like, yeah, I'm having some contractions. No, I don't have to moan through them. Yeah, they're fine. She's like, do you want me to check you again? And I thought I wasn't going to get checked, but then you're in that moment and you're so curious. So I was like, okay, check me. I think I was about 7, and still like talking, and everything was fine, and contractions were far apart. And so she had a great assistant midwife who said, you know, if you want, we could give you a homeopathic if you want the contractions to get closer together. And I was like, sure, let's make them get closer together. So they literally gave me the homeopathic. I got in the shower, and the next contractions were like 5 minutes apart.
Wow, it worked.
It happened so fast, yeah. And then we filled the tub, and I hopped in, and I didn't really have, I think a little bit different from the other births, I never really had a super intense urge to push with him. I know I was kind of pushing, but I didn't really feel like I needed to bear down hard until his head was already out, or maybe just that last little bit getting his head out. I'd have to watch the video back to remember, but there was kind of this feeling, it was a weird feeling of needing to like move my hips around almost. I think his head was a little malpositioned, and so I just kind of felt like I needed to shift my hips a lot during the contractions, and then finally like feel his head the whole time, like right there. But it took a while. I think it took like 40 minutes. I mean, I think by the time I got in the tub, you know, I think I went from 7 to 10 really fast, and then got in the tub and was like, I could just hang out here for a while.
This feels nice. I'm just going to chill here.
I'm just going to hang out. And, and then, you know, what was interesting, so we pushed his head out, and I had told her I want to sweep for the cord, and you can't see this on the video, but I had swept for the cord, and I didn't feel anything. So, but Joe and I, the whole pregnancy, kept talking about, I feel like this baby's going to have the cord around his neck.
Oh.
And so the midwife swept for the cord, and she couldn't feel anything. And so we thought, okay, well, I guess I was wrong. I guess no cord. Okay, whatever. And in that moment, even Joe and I looked at each other like, interesting. We were expecting that cord. And then pushed him out, and I start to bring him up, and I see the cord, and I was like, oh, cord. And so I kind of started to unwrap it, and my midwife reached over and got it off his neck real quick, and, you know, we bring him up. And it's interesting because a lot of people see that video, and they're like, oh my gosh, the baby was blue, the baby had the cord.
Yeah.
He was struggling. And what's really important to remember about babies when they are born, most of them are blue in color before they take their first breath, and then they pink up. And my midwives have all said the most important thing to assess is their tone. So does the baby come out floppy, or does the baby come out wiggling and moving and, full of tone in their body. And so he came out, and you can see him kicking and moving his little arms, and his little face pops up, and it looks like he's holding his breath, and he's, kind of, it took him a little while to take that first breath. It may have taken a minute or so for him to take his first breath and have his little cry. And then he did, and he pinked right up and started to nurse shortly after. And his birth was really cool in that we took the time to just stay in the water for a long time, and we let him float. And there's some really cool photos too of him floating, and he just kind of like unfolded his little body and was hanging out in the water floating. And it was really sweet. It was a really sweet birth. And my 17-year-old, Ellie, is the one who took the phenomenal photos of his birth,
so cool.
Which was so cool. It was so cool. And she did a great job. Man, she did a great job. And she was at Luna's birth, and she was at Kieran's birth, and she's just like all about it.
Yeah.
She's not afraid of birth at all, which is great. I'm glad she got to have the experience of seeing home birth and what that can be like. And she can make the choice for herself, when she's an adult and ready to have babies, but at least she's had good exposure. So, I've had just awesome births.
Wow.
It's been pretty cool. And we're done.
And proceed. Wow.
And I'm 40, and so that's it.
5 home births over the course of 20 years from when, your first birth, or one of them, you have a VHS tape to now a GoPro and a video that, thousands of people have seen. Like, what a journey.
Yeah.
Total journey. And it was, back in 1996, like there were not very many people having home births.
No, I would imagine not.
And I think it's a little more talked about now, and maybe a little, I don't want to call it mainstream, because it is certainly not mainstream, but there are more people who are starting to question whether or not the hospital is the right place for them. And I think that's awesome. We have more options in terms of birth centers and even midwives practicing in hospitals. A lot more options than we did in 1996 when I had my first baby. Mm-hmm. But I think it's still, home birth is still kind of seen as this extreme thing. People tell me all the time, "Oh, you're so brave to have a home birth." And I think, for me, the hospital was more scary, because I know that so often the train that you can jump on when you go into, especially as having done work as a doula, that a lot of times, women are made to feel like they shouldn't feel pain in childbirth. And so there's this, constant offering of, do you want something, or just an expectation that you're going to get an epidural at some point. And so, when do you want your epidural, and how long do you want to wait? And it's just not that that's bad, but there are so many complications that can happen when you start down that road, down the, let's induce a little with Pitocin, and let's introduce this and introduce, it messes with the natural progression of labor, which can then cause some pretty big complications in my opinion, and in what I've seen. And I love talking to women who have done it naturally, whether at home or whether in a hospital, because the feeling of accomplishment, it's really indescribable how you go from questioning your strengths and what you can do to being so solid in like, wow, I did this. I can do anything. I birthed a freaking human. Naturally, I felt this level of pain that I didn't know existed. And I not only survived, but I rocked it, and I got this amazing little human. And, you come out of it with such a sense of self and empowerment that it kind of makes me sad when women don't get that from their birth. You know, when they feel gypped or they feel like they were out of their own body, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit, because I think it really is such a great way to come into yourself as a woman and be like, I have got this. I am so strong. Nothing can shake that now. And I think especially in a culture where, women are often objectified and we're considered to be weaker in some ways. And man, you have a baby naturally and you're like, damn, I am not weak. I am not weak. I am so flippin' strong and so much stronger than I knew. And damn, you try doing that, hubby. You try feeling that, and then let's see if you can do it. It's so empowering that I really want that for women.
Yeah,
and I hope. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's something that has come up in a lot of our interviews. The moment of transformation that moms experience when they give birth, and then for the partner, for the husband or partner, if they have the ability to be there and witness their partner giving birth, like there's a transformation that happens with us as well, and it's powerful.
Absolutely. And what I love about home birth too is that the dads are able to be so involved.
Yes.
To whatever degree they want. And I remember during my first 3 births, my ex-husband was always behind me, just supporting me and rubbing my neck and my hair and sobbing. I have picture of him sobbing after his babies were born. And like for him, that experience was so powerful for him too, that being able to be, connected to me physically and, and feel it in a way through my body, and be able to kind of attach to the moment through my body, I think is so powerful for the dad too. And then my husband, Joe, now, him being able to catch the babies and to know like that, I want to do that. I want to catch the baby. I want to be one of the first people touching my baby. And that those moments for him were transformational. And he said, I will never get the opportunity to do this again in my life. I'm making it count.
Wow.
Wow. So I think you're so right, Matthew, that it transforms the dads too, and really allowing a dad to be involved to the level to which he's comfortable. Some guys are like, I'm not so sure, which is great, but if you really want to be involved, I think that you should be allowed to be. And I think oftentimes, if a woman's stuck in a hospital bed or has IVs hooked up to her or whatever, you just can't really physically be involved to the extent that you might want to be as the dad.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any experience with birth in a hospital, but I can just imagine with the doctors and the nurses and everyone else who has the experience and then the authority that a father or a partner has a much harder time being a part of the experience. And and that connection as a couple, making that connection and having those moments, of sweetness and eye contact between contractions and hugs and kisses, and it really solidifies your bond as well as a couple. I think it's so beautiful that I love that we're getting to share our home birth stories for people to hear, because I don't think it's talked about. I think that, like my husband, he just assumed, aren't babies just born in the hospital, and don't they just cut them out most of the time, and aren't cesareans kind of the normal, and so for him to get to hear my stories even before we got pregnant with Luna and Kieran, and I think it's really important for people to know that birth can be different. It doesn't have to be in a hospital. I'm glad we have doctors in hospitals for emergency situations, because there are times when you need to transfer, and I've been to those births. I've been to those home births where, something goes wrong and they need to transfer, and
thankfully we have that. But I would love to see us get back to healthy, low risk pregnancies being attended by midwives primarily, whether it's in a birth center or a home setting. I just think that the care model is so much more woman-centered and family-centered that I would love to see us as a country get to a place where that's considered normal. I think that would be awesome. I don't know if we ever will, but you guys are helping out.
We're working on it.
Sharing.
Working on it over here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for being a part of this with us and by sharing your stories. I mean, shoot, I'm going to be calling you the first. I mean, 5 babies like you have not just in birth, but I'm sure so much more knowledge that we didn't even skim the surface of. So for you to take that time and share, your treasures and your gifts with us and with our listeners, we are very grateful.
Oh, you're so welcome. I feel honored to be able to share and to help normalize something that is normal, that our bodies are made to do. It's an honor to get to share my stories of my babies.
Yes, and give our love to all of those babies, big and small, because they're always your babies, even if they're 21, still your baby. So
it's true. You just get to have a beer with them.
Yeah,
cool.
Right on.
That's awesome. Yeah, Melissa, you rock, and your birth stories are powerful and inspiring, and I love that you've had 5 births and they were all different, right? Like they were. There were similarities. There were things that were kind of common throughout, but it's just a beautiful thing that birth is always unique and always different, and you get to experience yourself new each time, and we're just very grateful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're grateful, like Sarah said, that you'd come on this show and share your stories, and I know our listeners have really picked up a lot, and just from your words and your experience. And once again, I want to say thank you so much.
Oh yeah, thank you guys.